All new Dr. Phil.
The story you're about to hear is shocking.
A sex slave from birth.
That's what you were born into.
The man who owns me said I was made for that.
Living a life of luxury.
You were flown on a private jet.
And humiliation.
I was kept in a cage that was hung from the ceiling.
Do you remember how old you were when you were first violated?
It was before I could talk.
Being flown around the world on private planes, dressed in a wardrobe fresh off the runway, to attending exclusive events with the rich and powerful, Kendall says her life growing up appeared to be lavish and decadent. She says she traveled the globe to the biggest sporting events in the entire world, from the Super Bowl and Olympics to the World Cup, rubbing elbows with doctors, successful politicians, and even high-profile members of law enforcement. Sounds like a life most people would dream of, right? So why then would she leave it and send me a video too petrified to show her face or even utter a single word, holding up handwritten signs that read, "I feel like I need to be punished. I need to go back so he can punish me. I want to kill myself before that happens. Please help me. Dr. Phil, please." She wouldn't even show her face. The story you're about to hear is so shocking, so unbelievable, that your mind is going to struggle to allow you to accept that things like this exist. But they do. And they are happening right now all over the world, even in small towns right here in the United States. Kendall's story begins when she was a newborn and her parents sold her to a powerful man who owns a dangerous international sex trafficking organization, a man she says still owns her and wants her back. Kendall says every glamorous event and plane ride was with a wealthy client who paid for her so they could abuse her in ways, well, they're just simply too horrendous to comprehend. Now, for nearly 4 months, we researched Kendall's story, trying to verify its authenticity. And after speaking confidentially to agencies, we were able to confirm that Kendall has, in fact, been trafficked. Here's what she told us.
I was born into this world of sex trafficking. It's the only life I've ever known. Since I left, everything has been so hard, and nobody except the man who owns me can help me. I was given to the man who owns me by my birth parents, and I was forced to have sex with clients. One of my first memories was thinking that it was normal for men to be fondling babies. My whole life I traveled all over the world and would go to some of the biggest events to meet clients and have sex with them. They were all extremely rich and prominent members of society. Sometimes they would just want to have sex with me, and sometimes they'd make me have sex with different people. The clients were often physically abusive. Clients were even allowed to smother me with a pillow or plastic bag while having sex with me, but they were never allowed to leave marks or bruises on my face because I always had to look pretty. The man who owns me constantly manipulated me and did horrible things to me. He would make me be a dog, made me eat feces. I was kept in a cage. Sometimes he would electrocute me as punishment. He said that all of this was happening because it was God's will, because God made me for this. If I told anybody about what was going on, that nobody would believe me. I 100% believed him. I still believe him.
Now, you might be saying, Dr. Phil, are you buying all of this? I can tell you that a very reliable source has confirmed to us that Kendall has in fact been trafficked, raped, molested, and severely abused by a very large, very dangerous organization. Now, that same source also confirms that she is not a runaway. Now, what I do believe is that she 100% believes even the most outrageous detail is true. Has it been distorted in her mind? I don't know. I'm going to find out today when I talk to her. Now, from being locked in a trunk with other children to being held in cages in the basements of beautiful mansions, Kendall claims she and other children were treated like property. Take a look.
I was told by the man who owns me that my birth parents had me for him, so I've always been his. One time I met them and they told me that I should appreciate what they did for me. They told me that this was the best thing for me. I believed that they were right, and I also believed that it was my fault that I didn't appreciate it. The man who owns me told me that I was special to him. I was strong, very smart, and not every girl would be able to do the job that I was made to do. I traveled with him frequently. When he had very special clients, I was the person that they would see. When the man who owns me wasn't around, there were people that we called watchers whose job was just to watch us, and there were people whose job was just to move us from place to place. When the movers would come for us, they would always come in the middle of the night like they were kidnapping us and drug us. They would put several of us in the trunk of a car. They were constantly moving me to different places, brothels, and sometimes to big mansions with servants. In some of these places that we would stay, we would be in basements. In some places we would be in rooms with cages or with tools on the wall, locks with different keys, and they were all used sexually on us. For the little boys, men would have sex with them. When they turned 5, then they were forced to have sex with women. The girls would start having sex as infants. All of this was completely normal to me, and I never thought seriously about leaving.
Now, you may notice that Kendall has this flat affect, a technique they use to survive this horrendous abuse. And before we meet Kendall, I want to talk to someone who has rescued women just like her. Former LAPD Lieutenant Andre Dawson supervised the FBI Innocence Lost Task Force and the Los Angeles Metro Human Trafficking Task Force, and he's now heavily involved in training law enforcement on how to recognize and respond to victims of human trafficking. So, Lieutenant, thank you so much for being here.
Thank you. It's my pleasure.
You know, when I said how to recognize and respond, even though sometimes these victims are out on their own and alone, if they're approached and asked, are you okay? Are you being held captive? Are you being trafficked? Even though there's nobody standing right there listening to what they're saying, they will deny it, correct?
Yeah, they will. It's that psychological manipulation that you were talking about. And the fear and the threats of violence is real.
Now, this is an international ring, and we've talked to government agencies about this. What makes it hard to catch these folks? They do move in private planes. They move outside the system a bit. But why is it so hard to catch these people?
In order to successfully prosecute these individuals, the traffickers or the pimps, you need the cooperation of a victim. And if a victim will not testify or will not cooperate with law enforcement, at least for the criminal portion of that particular case, it's hard to prosecute.
I think people generally don't realize when there's a big sporting event that there is a high concentration of these traffickers that bring women in because there's a lot of high rollers, there's a lot of big money, there's a lot of gambling, a lot of drinking, a lot of parties. They actually traffic these people in high concentration for those events, correct?
They do. Any sporting event, any large event where there's going to be money. You know, this crime is an opportunity to chase money. Wherever there's going to be money, you'll find a trafficker or a pimp will bring a victim to that event to be exploited.
So how much money are we talking about here? When they bring in, say, 5 or 10 girls, how many John's clients, customers, whatever, will these girls deal with across a 2 or 3 day period?
You know, what's interesting about that when you start talking about control, This victim is going to work as long as that pimp or trafficker wants them to work. As long as there's an opportunity to make money, that person is going to work. I know I had one case where at least our victim shared with us that a pimp paid cash money for 2 Mercedes-Benz Maybachs and a Bentley. You know, that's $1 million worth of cash.
It's very apparent to me, having talked to a number of women that have been exploited in this situation, that this woman has been brutalized, she has been exploited, she has been trafficked. I believe that to the core of my soul. Kendall is here, and she says that her clients were wealthy and influential men and women, all with a penchant for doing unthinkable things to children. Now, she says some of these clients were law enforcement, even FBI. Now, I'm going to have to dismiss Lieutenant Dawson because Kendall already fears, in fact, her number one fear is that I'm not going to believe her and that I'm going to send her back to the man who owns her. We're going to meet her after the break and hear what she has to say. We'll be right back.
When I would attend these events, clients were physically abusive. I've had broken fingers and broken ribs and been kicked a lot in the head. I would be at all of these nice events, but it would never end nice for me.
And later, he has actually forced you to kill people.
I didn't realize till later that I had killed him.
Tomorrow on Dr. Phil.
What I want from you is a little damn trust.
A violent marriage.
I broke her nose. I've hit him back.
He's pushed you out of a moving car when you were pregnant.
The day before the show.
I've said mean and hateful things just to calm this down.
So just to calm it down, you said, I will murder you.
Security's call.
I hit him with a glass. He was choking me out.
And you thought it would be a good idea to pull a knife.
That's tomorrow.
Some clients own their own island or a big piece of land, and they would buy us just to hunt us. Some laid traps for us, and others would track us down like animals. It was important never to be the one captured first because you didn't want to appear like you weren't playing the game. You would be punished. It's one of the scariest things clients ever had me do.
Well, Kendall claims that she was purchased by wealthy clients to do anything they pleased. Now, sometimes she was used as arm candy, others for very sick games. On the outside, her clients were pillars of their communities. But behind closed doors, she says they were sinister and evil human beings.
The clients I was forced to have sex with were very rich and powerful, very important VIPs. They were in law enforcement, doctors, psychiatrists, judges, politicians, even people who owned sports teams. I attended many parties for people who had just got elected into office. When I would attend these events, I had to look pretty and act like I belonged there. I had to know how to hold a conversation about politics. I would be at all of these nice events, but it would never end nice for me. At parties where people knew what we were there for, the clients would treat us really poorly. Many times clients were physically abusive. I've had broken fingers and broken ribs and been kicked a lot in the head, and I've even been sat on and smothered. The clients all had different expectations for what they wanted from me and what they wanted me to do. Sometimes they would bring little boys into the room and they would make me have sex with them. Many of the boys were as young as 5. To this day, I still wonder if I raped those little boys or if they raped me. Now I feel lost. I wrote to Dr. Phil because I feel like he might be able to help me and that maybe he can give me some idea of why I should even be alive.
Okay, Kendall is here. She is very nervous at this point and is having a difficult time taking that step. So I think I'll help her out a little bit, see if we can make this a bit easier for her. Kendall. Kendall, Dr. Phil. How are you? I thought I'd come walk you out instead of having you do it all by yourself. How's that? Okay? Come with me. All right? Oops. Don't want to hit you with the curtain. All right. Takes time. You can have a seat right there. Let's right off the top address what I've read and heard is your number one concern. You said is that I'm not going to believe you and send you back to this person that you describe as the man who owns you. Okay. Well, let me clear that up right off the top. Absolutely, unequivocally, that's not going to happen. I 100% believe that you have been trafficked. I 100% believe that you have been exploited. I 100% believe that you have been hurt, that you have been beaten, that you have been abused. And I 100% believe that you deserve the help that you've reached out to get. Now, you weren't allowed to use the word trafficked, correct? Why is that?
Because the man who owns me said that I wasn't trafficked. I was made for that, and trafficking is when girls who aren't made for that get kidnapped or sold into it.
You said you could tell the difference between girls that were born into it, according to him, versus those that were kidnapped when you encountered them. How could you tell the difference between the two?
The girls that weren't born into it, they had a harder time. They were always kept tied up or in cages, and they cried a lot.
Did he tell you how you came to be with him?
He said that my parents had me for him.
That they actually had you on purpose for him?
Yeah.
Where are your biological parents now?
I don't know.
Do you know what country they're from?
No.
Do you know if it's Europe, U.S.?
When I spoke to them, we spoke in English.
When you began to be exploited by him, what are the first things that you remember?
I remember being really little and a lot of men being around me and taking turns.
Did you have any sense at the time that that was wrong or a bad thing?
No, I thought guys held babies on their laps like that because it kept them from falling off.
And do you remember how old you were when you first had sex?
It was before I could talk. I was used to it by the time I was 2.
Do you know how old you are?
No.
Do you have any idea?
Probably about 23.
That's a guess, right?
Yeah, I looked at, like, on Facebook where they say, you're a child of the 90s if you remember these toys and stuff like that, and so then I try to guess from that.
Well, we're going to take a quick break. Kendall says that the man she believes owns her bestowed punishments for disobeying the simplest of tasks. She says his discipline was demoralizing, it was inhumane. From electrocution to actual torture. We're going to talk about that after the break. We'll be right back.
When I would get in trouble, the man who owns me would have really rough sex with me, take sharp blades and cut me. The man who owns me is smart and rich. My whole life, he made sure that I knew he was in complete control.
Now, Kendall says that she is the property of a powerful sex trafficker and that God placed her on this earth to be his. She says when she broke his rules, his wrath was brutal and downright sadistic.
The man who owns me is smart and rich. He has connections with very powerful people all over the world. My whole life, he made sure that I knew he was in complete control. He would give me commands like a dog, like come or sit or stay. I would have to obey them or I'd get in trouble. Sometimes I would have to be a dog for days. I would ask myself why this was happening to me, but I always knew it's because the dogs were behaving better than I was. When I would get in trouble, the man who owns me would have really rough sex with me, take sharp blades and cut me. He would take all of my clothes and blankets and make me wet, so I'd be cold. Sometimes he would throw me in the bathtub and hold my face down. Every time I was really scared that I was going to die, but then I was really sad when he would let me live. Sometimes I was kept in a cage that was locked and hung from the ceiling. The cages were barely big enough for me to even be in. There was no one I could turn to for help. I was under his control and there was nothing I could do about it.
Well, you just heard Kendall say she was scared to death, but actually sad to live. So at one point, this man, her captor, even gave her a gun, but that didn't end well.
When I was 7 years old, the man who owns me gave me a gun and said that he would show me how to kill myself. He told me that if I ever want to leave him, this is my only chance. First, he put the gun right here, and he told me not to shoot myself right here because I might flinch and it would just go through my jaw. Then he put the gun inside my mouth, pointing up, and he told me not to shoot myself right there because, again, I might flinch. He put the gun right here to my chest, and he said I would most likely miss my heart. Finally, he said to place it right up against my head, to take a deep breath in, let it halfway out, and then pull the trigger. I pulled the trigger and nothing happened. The gun wasn't loaded. I immediately got punished for trying to leave him. When that happened, I realized that he would never let me die.
You wanted that gun to go off.
Yes.
Tell me why.
Because he said that that's how I could leave him.
Violence was part of your life with this man.
Yes.
You say that you have witnessed him murder people.
Yes.
How many people have you seen him murder?
Probably about 20 or 25, but then there would be lots of times that he would be there and have other people do it.
And how would he murder these people?
One time he just, took the little girl's head and twisted it. He's shot people.
Did he kill children?
I know for sure he killed her.
You were there. And how old were you at this point?
About 4.
And you're guessing at these ages, right? Because you don't know. You said that he has actually forced you to kill people. How did you do it?
One time he had me hold like a newborn baby. He said that I had to hold it by the neck because newborn babies can't keep their head up by themselves. The baby died. I didn't know that he said that the baby had fallen asleep, that I had put the baby to sleep. I didn't realize till later that I had killed it.
Kendall says the cycle of children being born into trafficking continued when she gave birth to 3 children, all of whom she claims are still with her abusers. We're going to talk about that after the break.
I was allowed to get pregnant because men paid for that. I was pregnant several times, but I had several abortions. I had 3 that survived, 2 girls and a boy. After I had each baby, they were taken away.
Closed captioning.
When I was in the world of sex trafficking, I gave birth to children. I was allowed to get pregnant because men paid for that. I was pregnant several times, but I had several abortions. I had 3 that survived, 2 girls and a boy. When I had each child, they were all induced so that I wouldn't get too big. After I had each baby, they were taken away, but sometimes I would get to see them later as a reward. I don't know who their fathers are or where they are. I would like to have my kids with me, but I feel like if I did, I would just get them in trouble. It's been so difficult that even now I try to forget that I've had them.
Were you involved in raising these children?
No,
So how quickly were they taken away from you?
right after I had them.
So you've not seen them? You don't have a relationship with them?
I've seen them several times for like if I did something right or if he wanted me to do something, sometimes he would say I could see one of them after. And there was the younger girl I had, I saw her more often than the other 2.
Now, when he started trafficking you in a commercial way, how many times would you be expected to perform in a day?
I don't know. It's hard to even know sometimes when the day ended.
Would you see 3 or would you see 15
More like 15.
in a day?
Yeah, unless, if the client paid for something exclusive, then you could be with him longer. Or if they were doing something different than just sex, you have to finish with the client, do whatever they want. But if it was just sex, it would be a lot of men.
Okay, and when you would see 15 a day, where would you see them? Would it be in a hotel? Would they come to you? Would you go to them? Where would you see that many people?
Like a lot of times I would go to parties, and that's where I would see them. Sometimes they would come to me if I was being punished for something and I was put in one of his brothels, then they would come there. Sometimes I just would live in a room for a while where the men would come, but sometimes I would live somewhere and we would go to visit the men.
And when you were flown, you said sometimes you were put on a private jet and flown into a big event, and you had to dress up and be highly groomed, and so you would fit in.
For the clothes, usually a guy would come in with a lot of expensive clothes and dress us up. I also had a hair and makeup artist.
That would fix you up for a big event.
Yeah.
And how much would you charge these people?
I didn't charge them anything.
You didn't handle the money.
No.
So it was direct. Who did handle the money?
I guess the people working for the man who owns me.
You say you had 6 fake passports, right? These passports were created and given to you by this man, correct?
Yeah, by one of the people who worked for him.
Right. And you would use that to fly to another country to go to some event, correct?
Yeah, or just to go see a client.
You say that you would rather die than go back to him. True.
Yeah.
Have you tried to end your own life? How many times?
Probably 7 to 10 times over the past 1.5 years or 2 years.
You say you feel a strong draw to go back to him.
Yeah.
Why?
I don't know exactly why. I just, I belong there, and I feel bad every day that I'm not with him. He said that he's the only person who can ever help me, and so I feel like that's true.
It's okay to kill somebody.
Yeah.
It was okay to have sex with a 5-year-old boy. You think he's a good guy that loves you?
More than anybody else has.
Have you ever watched the Dr. Phil show?
Yes. It scared me.
Yeah. What scared you about it?
You're a rich white guy, and that scared me. I thought that you maybe know him. And also, like, you don't seem to like it when people lie, and I feel like all of these things are lies.
What do you mean that all these things are lies?
Like, he really made me learn the difference between the truth and the lie. And all of the things that I'm saying now are the lies that I'm never allowed to say.
What were you allowed to say?
The truth. He loves me. He was the only one who would be a father to me. He's always done what's best for me and taken care of me.
But the reality is, he had you do all the things that we've talked about here. That's the reality.
Yeah, the reality and the truth aren't the same thing.
The truth is what he's told you?
Yeah, well, the reality is like what's happened. The truth is that none of that was bad.
It was okay to kill somebody.
Yeah.
It was okay to have sex with a 5-year-old boy.
Yeah.
It was okay to hold a baby by its neck until it died. It was okay to have 3 children and give them away for...
Because those things had a higher purpose.
You tell me what he thinks. What do you think?
I'm confused.
Do you think he's a sick son of a bitch?
No.
You think he's a good guy that loves you?
More than anybody else has.
If you had advice for the girls that are still there and want to leave, what would it be?
I would tell them not to leave.
Why is that?
Because it really sucks. It's really hard, and it confirms everything that he said is true, and there isn't any help.
I went through, listened to everything you've said, read everything that you've said, and I pulled out a lot of things that I call internal dialogue that are floating around in your head. The little girl was killed because I liked her. He killed people because of what I did. I was made to have sex with a 5-year-old boy. I wonder if I raped them or they raped me. Sometimes I feel suicide is the only way. If there is a God, he made me for him. And I'm willing to help you challenge every single one of those things. If it will withstand challenge, fine. But if it won't, you need to replace it with something that will.
I want those things not to be true. I don't just want to not believe them.
I can tell you they're not true, but that doesn't matter. What has to matter is that you need to know they're not true. And to do that, you need to test them. You need to test each one against a criteria to determine whether it's true or not. And that's what you need to learn. And that's what's going to happen. All right, next, there's someone that I want Kendall to meet. She says she knows just what Kendall's going through. We're going to add her to the conversation after the break.
My childhood was destroyed by a man named Gary Lundquist. He put a collar around my neck and raped with objects. I was prostituted to men. I was forced to do every imaginable sexual act. When I hear stories about other survivors, I know how hard it's going to be to adjust to normal life. It's not your fault.
Do you need Dr. Phil's help? Text Phil to 88500 and share your story for a chance to appear on the show. Standard message and data rates may apply.
This show is almost over, and we're getting ready to start taping a new one. But something is missing. You. You're going to be in the Los Angeles area, and you want to watch a live studio taping of the Dr. Phil Show. Go to drphil.com for free tickets or call 323-461-PHIL. My next guest, Michelle, says she was only 8 years old when her mother's boyfriend, who was also an elementary school teacher, began sexually abusing, torturing, and selling her to countless men.
I know how pedophiles operate firsthand. My childhood was destroyed by a man named Gary Lundquist. He was a 5th grade school teacher. After dating my mom for only a few weeks, Gary told my mom he thought that I should go spend a weekend with him all by myself. My mother thought it was a good idea. The very first night, he asked if he could take a picture of me. That was the last time I had my innocence. After Gary took the photograph, he took me down to his basement, made me strip naked, and locked me inside a cage. For the next 3 days, he tortured me. He put a collar around my neck. He trained like I was a dog. I had to sit and stay. He made me eat dog food, and I was bound in different ways and raped with objects. Gary told me that I was his sex slave now. I was so confused. I thought he would kill me. Gary belonged to a child sex ring. I was prostituted to men. I was forced to do every imaginable sexual act and tortured in all different types of ways. Many of the men would either electrocute me. I was beaten up several times. I was gang raped. Whenever I would disobey Gary, he would punish me. He had a stun gun. All he had to do was threaten me with a stun gun, and I would do anything he said. When I was 9 years old, I was sent to stay with a man named Frank. Frank was a pornographer in New York City. I would stay with him sometimes for days at a time while he filmed me doing all sorts of sexual acts with other people. Frank was the scariest man I ever knew. To disobey him meant instant, painful punishment. The abuse was so horrible that I really lost all hope and began to think that the only way out was suicide. When I hear stories about other survivors, I know how hard it's going to be to adjust to normal life. It's not your fault. You have to believe that it is possible to overcome it.
She's written about her triumph in a powerful memoir titled Scared Selfless, My Journey from Abuse and Madness to Surviving and Thriving. Please welcome Michelle Stevens. Michelle, thank you for being here, and thank you for writing this book. When you listen to our conversation here, what we've been talking about, some of it is hauntingly similar, correct?
It is. When I was reading about your story, the ways that we were treated, the tortures that we suffered, the ways that we were prostituted are remarkably similar. It was incredibly difficult.
And what do you do now?
I'm a therapist.
Right. And you have a PhD in psychology,
I do.
Right? And you are equipped to help survivors of just this kind of experience, correct?
Correct. And I have had a few clients over the years who have similar stories to yours. You have to make a decision not to give in to the despair.
I'll bet you we could stay here till the cows came home and you wouldn't guess what it was you said that gave me a lot of hope and optimism. But I'm going to tell you what it is right after the break. Want to know what's coming up on Dr. Phil? Visit our website and subscribe to our email newsletter. You'll get weekly updates, life strategies, and exclusive video that you won't find anywhere else.
Plus, on drphil.com, you can see sneak previews of upcoming shows. Log on today.
Before we went to break, I said that Kendall had said one thing in particular that gave me great hope and optimism. You said, I'm confused. The fact that you're confused means that this is an open subject for you. We're in the game, right? That means we're in the game. When people come here, this is the beginning of our relationship, not the end, okay? I've got guests that have been on this show 8, 10 years ago that I'm still involved with. And this is the beginning. I've never been under the misapprehension that I'm doing 8-minute cures up here, that I'm fixing people's lives in an hour. This is the beginning. I find out who you are. I get an assessment of what I think are the best thing. And the good thing about being Dr. Phil, and I'm not talking about myself in the third person, I'm saying Dr. Phil as the show here is I have lots of resources, and I have at my fingertips the top resources in the nation lined up to help you. Okay? Beginning immediately. And I'm not going to say who, and I'm not going to say where, because I don't want anybody knowing where you're going or who you're seeing or where they could find you. You deserve a chance to have your life and live it the way you want to live it. What I want to do is give you that chance. Fair enough? You willing to take it? Okay. All right. All right. I want to thank all of my guests today, and a very special thanks to Michelle Stevens. Her book, Scared Selfless, is available today. And by the way, this is a compelling read. I tell you what, it's not just a read about a situation and circumstance that's relevant if you've been through this kind of thing. It's a read that's relevant about self-determination. It's a read about choosing your path in life and owning that decision. And everybody in this audience is going home with a copy. All right? Thanks for being here. We will see you next time. Guys, thanks so much.